Hello and welcome to this Outbrain webinar and panel today, focusing on how to leverage native for apps. We're going to kick things off with a short introduction to native strategies for apps, and then follow that up with a panel. We're delighted today to be joined by one of our clients, Jamie Day, who is Performance Marketing Manager at Lifesum, a health and wellbeing app that uses a native strategy and a long-term Outbrain partner, and also their account director from Outbrain, Kelly Hayes. But before we get to any of that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the 2020 app landscape. It will come as no surprise that we literally use apps to run our lives, whether it is managing our finances, getting the workout that we want, streaming our favorite box set, or ordering and impatiently tracking our favorite takeaway delivery. Apps really do make up part of our day-to-day routine. On average, eMarketer reports that we spend 2 hours and 11 minutes every single day on our mobile apps. So that means for the first time since TV began, we actually look at our mobile devices more every day than we actually watch TV. So app downloads are set to grow. That probably also comes as no surprise. Year on year, we will be getting more and more on our phones. That does mean as well that as app marketers, it's going to become increasingly challenging for you to demonstrate to users why your app is one with a difference, one that is going to add value to their lives and really make a difference to their routines. Just looking at the App Store today, the Apple App Store, there are over 2 million apps, and many of these apps do exactly the same thing. So as an app marketer, it's really important that you don't only resonate with the audience that you want to use your app, but you're able to show them why long-term you're the best app for them. So we download lots of apps. There are an increasing amount of apps coming onto the stores that we frequent. But actually, despite downloading between 60 to 90 apps on our mobile devices, we only use a maximum of a third of those. So as an app marketer, it's not just about getting somebody to download your app, it's about showing them why your app is one that they should be using day in and day out. So why native? Native really gives you the opportunity to speak to your audiences in a way that they both like and in a way that they want. So when it comes to choosing the right app for us, we want to be informed. We want to understand why this app has specific value and why this app is the one that we want to use long term. We are spending lots of time on our mobile devices, as I said earlier, but we are Generation X when it comes to advertising. And by that, I mean generation, I cannot wait to press X and get rid of this annoying advert on my phone. We've run lots of research to understand what consumers want when it comes to advertising. And it probably comes as no surprise that 95% of us dislike an ad that interrupts or disrupts our online experience. We've seen a massive growth in banner blindness, how much audiences actually see, let alone engage with display advertising. And actually, if we don't like an ad and we feel like it's interrupting us, long term, we will tend to lean towards ignoring that. And that's exactly what display advertising has seen, a decrease in CTR and certainly a decrease in the engagement that we get post-click with display advertising. So understanding that discovery is preferable to disruption, it probably comes as no surprise that native is in massive growth. Unlike display that sits on the periphery of content, native is actually on the main stage. It's something that audiences don't mind seeing as long as it's relevant to them. And it's actually set to be the preferred form of advertising by 2025, according to this research from Huffington Post. So when it comes to where we see native and where, as an app marketer, you should be thinking about using this format, premium publisher environments tend to gain a lot more trust from audiences. These are environments that we make time for and we take time with. So on average, we see that ads that are seen on premium publisher sites are 44% more trusted than within the walled gardens of social media. So where do you find Outbrain? We power native across some of the world's most premium publishers. Discovery at scale. We serve 290 billion discoveries every single month on sites like CNN, The Guardian, and Telegraph here in the UK. The Outbrain difference is that we understand what readers have been frequenting across this mix of publishers, and we're able to understand what they are very, very likely to want to discover next. So the Outbrain interest data profile does exactly that. We've built an understanding, a map, if you will, around our network of what audiences have been enjoying and consuming. And we tap into this interest data to recommend more to them based on what we think that they want more of. So here are just some of the formats that you will see on the Outbrain Smart Feed, our technology that is hosted by the sites that I mentioned earlier. The first one is a great alternative to traditional display. Our high impact placements sit in the feed of editorial content. They are 100% share of voice and preferred by marketers who don't necessarily want to sit alongside another marketer. The next format, which is our traditional smart ad, is a text and image format that sits in the feed of content alongside editorial, alongside video. But importantly, this is a very cost-effective format and probably most used by app marketers and anyone that wants a very cost-effective post-click conversion. The next format is our video scroll to watch. So we believe this is Outstream done right. It won't start playing until someone has reached the smart feed or indeed finished the article that they had dedicated time to on that premium publisher environment. This is a great place for short video, so 6 to 20 seconds ideally, and it will start playing with sound off. Next is our carousel ad. So this is just one of the shoppable formats that has more of a social feed that you will start seeing increasingly on the Outbrain Smart Feed. We understand that feed adoption is something that you see across search and social, and the open web is no different. We're starting to use these innovative formats so that audiences can engage a little bit more with the feed experience. Next is click to watch. So this format is very unique to Outbrain. It's been built 100% for user engagement and will only play with sound on if an audience clicks to watch. As such, we do see that audiences that do click are very, very likely to complete the video that they have chosen to engage with. So it's a great spot for longer form video content. So by that we mean 30 seconds plus. And we also see that audiences that click are very likely to complete that watch and sometimes even click for more. So post-click conversion, driving to site, and indeed driving to App Store off the back of a long form video, click to watch is a perfect user experience for that flow. So now let's just take a little look at some of the apps that have used native as their go-to strategy. First up is Blinkist. You may have seen some of these formats across the open web and indeed on social, but Blinkist essentially allows you to consume literature in bite-sized format and also across some content that they create and host as podcasts as well. Blinkist challenge was really, really simple. They wanted to educate audiences about what the app did and make sure that they use this not just once they downloaded it, but also used it as part of an ongoing entertainment and self-empowerment tool. They did this by creating cut-through above and beyond other educational apps and literature apps as well. The solution was really simple. They wanted audiences to trust that this app did what it said on the tin. So they used a premium publisher network, including Outbrain, and they wanted to reach audiences by resonating with really busy people. So really busy people tend to be professional. They tend to be people who are trying to work out that perfect work-life balance. They did this by creating content that would resonate with this particular audience. So headlines like "This woman reads 100 books in a month and you can too," and using images of people both in business attire and clearly enjoying a work-life balance. Their content strategy was really simple. They wanted to create a synergy between people that were successful, both professionally and personally, and people that read lots of books. And that's exactly what they did with the content that they created. They had a strategy to drive with content as a first touch point, and to make sure this was the way to drive long-term value, they A/B tested this with driving directly to the App Store itself. And what they saw was proof in numbers. There was a significant increase in signups using content first versus driving directly to the App Store. So their go-to strategy now is absolutely using content first. By informing audiences about everything the app can do before they download it, they know and are satisfied about everything and the unique characteristics that this app has. And as such, they tend to see that they don't just use it once post-download, but actually have much more propensity to use it as an ongoing part of their day-to-day routine. So the results really speak for themselves. There is a much higher lifetime value versus social from audiences that were driven from Outbrain, around 11% uplift. They also have 50% higher time on site versus search channels. And overall, Blinkist see that the conversion rate of an Outbrain user who are clicking on the App Store link within that content is 20% higher than any other channel. A content-first strategy is something that we do see a lot across app marketers. 8Fit, for example, a health and fitness app, use content first to educate audiences. This might be bite-sized clips of the workouts that they can access on the app, or it might be content explaining why this type of workout is great for a user long-term. They do A/B test this, much like much of the app marketers that we work with driving directly to App Store, but they do see that content overall drives a much lower cost per install long-term. Obviously, with some categories, we don't necessarily need as much content to get audiences to consider downloading and using that app long term. Take gaming, for example. A headline and an image driving to App Store can certainly tell a user why this game is right for them. And this is why, in this particular instance, games, we don't need a content-first experience. They see that by driving audiences from premium publisher environments alone, there is a much better lifetime value than driving from search and social. Using Outbrain, games actually drives incremental 200,000 users using this native strategy. Shortly, we'll be talking to Lifesum about the lifetime value that they achieve using Outbrain versus other channel partners. But I think, first of all, let's take a little look at how lifetime value and ROI is calculated for app marketing. Anyone can help you drive downloads, but it certainly is important to consider the channels that are giving you the best ROI versus the channels that are giving you the best CPA, because they don't necessarily reflect each other. When you're calculating ROI, first of all, you need to look at the lifetime value, so the amount of money that the person that has downloaded your app has actually generated. Take away the initial CPA, that's how you look at ROI overall. So here's some examples. So let's say, for example, your CPA achieved with another channel is as low as 89 pence, which is great. However, post-install, they actually didn't make any in-app purchases. And they also did not maybe subscribe for a further month. That would give you an ROI of minus 89 pence. However, let's say your CPA goal using another channel was much higher. It was £15.60. But that person went on to make several in-app purchases and subscribe on a rolling basis for 6 or 7 months. The lifetime value of that person was £30.49, which means that overall the ROI of that channel was £14.89, despite the initial CPA being much higher. It's just really important to consider that the lowest CPA does not necessarily give you the best ROI when considering your long-term strategy and long-term channel partners. That being said, let's take a little look now about how those results came about for our partner Lifesum, as we're joined by Jamie from Lifesum and Kelly, their account director at Outbrain. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Jamie, performance marketing manager at Lifesum. Obviously, we've worked with you guys now for a little while. It'd be great, I guess, to hear from you a quick overview of Lifesum, what makes you a little bit different as an app, and maybe your journey with Outbrain so far.
Great. Well, as we can see here, the tagline is healthy living simplified. Whether that's to lose weight, to stay healthy, or to gain weight, Lifesum is kind of the ultimate mobile tool for you. In terms of my journey with Lifesum, I've been at the company for about 1.5 years, and my mission, what I was brought in to do, was to grow and scale the native efforts at Lifesum. So that's what I'm still doing, and we'll kind of go forward with that.
And before you were at Lifesum, had you had lots of experience using native as a channel partner before?
Yeah, so I previously worked at a media agency, so I kind of had lots of experience of kind of a variety of channels, digital and not digital, and native was always something that we would kind of consider using.
As I said a little bit earlier on in the webinar, we've worked with lots of apps who have decided to use a content-first strategy, particularly when they feel like they want to inform audiences a little bit more around the value of the app, around everything that it can do. And we tend to see that that really does almost give you a much stronger strategy for lifetime value and repeated use. We've got a heritage of working with obviously lots of different marketers, and we test and learn from content that works best for them. When you looked at doing this first campaign with Outbrain, how did you start planning the content that you wanted to use for your app marketing strategy? And I guess, did you use any audience insights initially to create that content?
Well, when we first started with Outbrain and when we launched our first campaign, what we initially did was to take learnings from the other channels. So what had worked for them, what was currently working, what learnings we could take and inject that into what we were doing with Outbrain. Of course, we had to consider the audience that we were trying to reach with Outbrain as well, and it was a slightly older audience. And then obviously as we went further, we were able to tweak that content and make it more relevant to the users that were seeing it. That being said, I think that it's kind of important that kind of all of the channel mix bounces off each other. So right now we take learnings from Outbrain and apply that to other channels as well. So it's kind of all interconnected for us.
And you've been working with us for a little while now. Is there any content that works better on Outbrain versus, say, social?
I think that, I mean, it's completely different. So the way that the language that we use on social is completely different to the language that we use on Outbrain. I think the discovery moment with Outbrain is completely different. So somebody's actually finding the app and they know nothing about it. And so the content has to be tailored for that discovery moment and for user journey beyond that.
Great, thank you. So Kelly, obviously, as an account director at Outbrain, you work with lots of apps. As a company, we've worked with everyone from Audible to TikTok to 8fit, and obviously Lifesum. When it comes to health and fitness apps, is there any sort of best practice that we think about at the start of a campaign or give to our clients to get started?
Yeah, I think, Jamie kind of just touched on it, but definitely those who kind of look to use the landing page as an initial touch point is really important because of that discovery moment. Users don't necessarily know about your app. And if they're driven directly to the App Store, there's also tons of other apps that they can interact with and kind of browse almost while they just click through on your ad. So it's really, really important and as a best practice for, app marketers, especially health and fitness, to build out landing pages that talk about the benefits or what you can do with the app or things to know to really kind of hone in on why the app is that great to drive the initial install then subscription. The other key thing is to also ensure that your creative is slightly different. You can start off by using learnings from other channels, but really making sure that you're able to adapt it to native audiences in particular, because just because you are able to reach user A on social doesn't mean you're going to reach that same user on native and vice versa. The audience mix can be different, but that's what makes it so great, is because you can get that incremental reach off of that if you do adapt your creatives and landing pages.
For sure. Okay. So we've talked about the content, we've talked about the landing pages. Obviously, when you started with Outbrain, we worked with you and our complimentary copywriting service and you guys and your multiple headlines to kind of test and learn what was going to get the best results. And I think obviously using native before, Jamie, you had a good idea in mind about what would perform best for the discovery moment, and obviously the best way to measure that. One of the key things that we often see is that sometimes the most engaging headlines, so the headlines with the highest click-through rate, don't necessarily give you the best conversions. And we've got some examples here from your initial campaign. On the left-hand side, obviously, lots about changing your life works really well for that initial user engagement, and they certainly clicked. But when it came to actual conversions, you can see on the right-hand side, they're actually highlighting messages that would resonate with people that would want to use this app actually converted better. So wanting to burn fat, needing weight loss, things like that. Kelly, once we actually had these initial learnings about the headlines, how did we optimize towards the performance that Lifesum wanted?
Well, so we initially started off quite broad. We tried a lot of different headline variations. Looking at 2019 alone, we had 291 headline variations running at any given time. So once we did that, we really kind of narrowed down on what was working. And then from there, we started to make a few tweaks. You'll notice here that the headlines, even, the top click-through rate headlines versus the top converting headlines are very similar. By just finding little tweaks that we could make in the headlines, we were able to kind of figure out a little formula that would ultimately result in better conversion rates over time, but also good click-through rates over time as well, because both are important to help scale the campaign. Also just making sure that we're consistently launching new ad variations. So whether it's the headline and the image combination, or testing out, similar images with the same type of headline that always works, having that constant refresh and uploading new ads is really important to make sure you are optimizing the campaigns to scale while also perform at scale.
Great. So Jamie, you talked about this earlier, understanding the channel mix that you wanted to use. Your background, obviously, at a media agency previously, gave you a thorough understanding of channel partners that might work best for you. When it comes to choosing channel partners and key periods for Lifesum, how do you plan and choose who is going to work best for you at certain times of the year? And does this tend to differ?
Yeah, well, I think that first and foremost, we're always considering kind of our campaign goals and who we're trying to reach. I mean, the whole year is a key part of the year for us. We kind of have really ambitious growth targets. But that being said, we do see seasonal trends. First and foremost, the kind of Christmas and New Year period, obviously kind of within the health and fitness industry is a really key time of year. But that's kind of followed by summer and kind of around Halloween and things like that. So I think we kind of take each moment as it comes, and then we kind of consider what the campaign goals are and try to adapt. If we take our biggest time of the year, kind of that Christmas and New Year period as an example, we'll be looking to kind of assemble a channel mix that kind of can reach those goals. So whilst we're including native, we're also looking at social, at search, kind of what Instagram and Facebook can do for us. And I think that all of those kind of have their different goals and kind of what audience they can reach. But as I said, we kind of take each moment as it comes and then assess it on kind of those campaign objectives.
Cool. Thank you. And Kelly, when it comes to working with partners that we know are using other channels like search and social, how do we set expectations around how performance with native might differ and best manage their expectations around sort of timelines and performance?
Well, normally what we try to do initially is really understand, their benchmarks across different channels. We usually ask for a range because we know at any given time someone may have a CPA target of, let's say, $30, but their range on social might actually, at any given time, they see a CPA between $30 and $60, depending on seasonality, different, fluctuations day in, day out. So we initially try to understand their benchmark ranges, and then from there we kind of go into trying to educate them on making them understand that with native campaigns, it is a discovery moment and the users may have no idea of your app or who you are as a brand, but that's okay because it may take a bit more time, and we try to emphasize that. It may take 6 weeks to be within 20% of our target, but over time, we are able to collect so many different learnings that allow us to adapt and evolve the campaigns to ultimately perform better for the long run. So we don't try and purely focus on short term right away. We really push for focusing on the long term. And then once we hit our benchmarks, we try, or hit our target, we ask what's next, what else can we do? Because a CPA doesn't always back into a positive ROI or lifetime value at all times. We'd really try and understand, are these users driving a good return on investment for you? Is the lifetime value the quality that you want? And we really try and have those conversations throughout the campaign to make sure that we're aligned 100% all the time.
And Jamie, obviously, we have an ongoing strategy with you guys, so hopefully those expectations that Kelly set have definitely been managed. In terms of Q1, both this year and last year, and the results, what is it about native that makes it such an important part of your channel mix for an ongoing strategy?
I think that it offers something different for us. It reaches an audience that we're unable to reach with our kind of traditional channel mix. Actually, the more that we've been able to scale that, the more we've seen that trend. I think that it kind of enables us to reach users and actually educate them about our app before they're kind of downloading and becoming our subscribers. That's where it really differs to the other channels. I think that there's real value in somebody being able to explore, to land on this page and actually learn about something before they've kind of dipped their toe in the water. From that, we're able to see really competitive conversion rates when comparing it to other lower funnel activity.
Yeah, I think, and this is something I touched upon in the short presentation before, which is, you know, if someone understands everything and every piece of value they can get from an app before they download it, they are much more likely to use it more frequently for longer because they understand absolutely everything it has to offer. And so it's confirming to us to obviously hear that from a marketer like yourselves. Obviously, looking at Q1 last year, there were some fantastic initial results. I think that by the end of the campaign, we achieved a 20% lower CPA than the original goal. When we started out, was it quite clear that we were going to overachieve that CPA, or is that something that happened over the course of the campaign through the optimizations and testing and learning lines? I guess, Kelly, you were probably the most hands-on person during this period. How did that look across the campaign period?
I think in the beginning, like I said, it did, you know, time was definitely something that we had, which was great because initially we did start off a bit broad, then narrowed in, and then went broad again. The CPAs that we were able to achieve, I think we were hoping to initially just reach that target. The fact that we were able to was kind of just an added bonus, and the fact that we did find that sweet spot formula for this headline, this image, this landing page to ultimately drive a higher volume of subscriptions over time and a better CPA over time. I think also the fact that we really made sure we were, you know, optimizing publisher sections where possible, testing different targeting tactics where we felt that it made sense. So over time, using our interest reporting to figure out what interests or what are the users' interests that are converting, to kind of really narrow in and try different targeting tactics and find ways to reach audiences that were more likely to convert over the course of the initial campaigns.
And Jamie, these insights around using these interest segments and tactics, was there at any point that we fed that back to you guys and you thought, wow, that's actually, we should be making more of that, or we're going to go back to the drawing board and tweak this slightly based on the Outbrain audience insights?
Yeah, well, I think this is kind of a constant learning trend. I don't think we can ever say like, oh, that's kind of complete and done, because we're, even now in this moment, we're still learning. And so we kind of have regular contact, the kind of the previous results, we're kind of going back historically, and then the results from the last 10 days, the last week, and try and kind of keep kind of ourselves informed, up to date on kind of what's working. Kelly's always really good in feeding you kind of try this and try that. And we're always kind of willing to kind of to go with those suggestions and see what we can do. And I think that going forward, we'll continue kind of taking those suggestions and learning as we go.
Great. And in terms of that 12% registration to paid subscription rate, how did that compare to kind of your expectations of native, knowing what the channel could do previously?
I think that it was, I mean, I think it's kind of been surprising. I think that if you look at, as I mentioned earlier, kind of what native offers and kind of bringing users that are aware of the product, you inform them, you would kind of expect there to be kind of a good kind of paid subscription rate. But I think it kind of has overachieved in that sense. And I think that that's what's really enabled us to kind of take Outbrain and scale our performance with it. I think that now we actually have expectations of the channel, whereas kind of if we roll back a year, we didn't really. We were kind of waiting to see what happened and how we could incorporate it into our channel mix. Now it exists in our channel mix, and we actually expect something from the channel, which brings with it new challenges of kind of how we can scale and how we can push performance further.
I think that's a really nice segue, actually, because obviously this was last year. These were the results that we saw. You know, we flip forward to this year and we've doubled the average monthly installs, but the percentage of registration to paid subscription rate actually went down slightly, which is what you'd expect, right? We've doubled the amount of installs, and therefore you've got massive volumes, and there was a slight shift in that conversion rate. Obviously, we'd set the bar pretty high for ourselves. How did this year compare versus last year overall? Because I know you look at us specifically from a lifetime value perspective rather than purely conversions and CPAs.
Yeah, well, I think if we go back and look at last year, our main focus with our key markets, so with kind of key markets specifically, I'm talking about the US, and that is where we invested a lot of our time and effort. As the year gone on, we've actually expanded into multiple different geos, which has enabled us to scale our performance. And as you say, with kind of scaling that performance, you would expect the registration to subscription rate to drop slightly. But I think what we've got now is much greater volume of traffic coming into our website. And with that brings new challenges. I mean, it brings new challenges from kind of a pre-click optimization point in trying new headlines and images that work for different geos, but it also brings new challenges when we're looking at content as well, considering that each geo doesn't behave the same. I think to kind of simplify the answer to that question is that, I mean, this year's been really successful. With that brings it new pressures as well, and the fact that we want to kind of continue to be on the upward curve and drive performance forward.
For sure. And I think in terms of that performance, Kelly, obviously we've talked about content and headlines and strategy. In terms of a performance perspective from Outbrain, obviously you've been very hands-on managing this as an account managed strategy through our dashboard. This is not something we've run programmatically. It's been very much a direct buy, leveraging our biddable CPC model to reach these goals. What were the changes that we made this year versus last year with that consideration that we were targeting different geos, we were looking at larger audiences and scaling this above and beyond, obviously, the results from last year?
Yeah, I think initially because we were, like James said, we were really targeting the US, and we tried to use a lot of those learnings to go into different markets, but we quickly realized that it wasn't necessarily just going to work off the bat. So from an Outbrain perspective, we really tried to delve deep into the insights to figure out what should we try next. And we actually would just start coming up with lists of things to do. For example, I talked about tweaks, and we have, the headline, the image that we can change, but something that we tested tweaking was actually the source name. So rather than just Lifesum, to download the Lifesum app, or Lifesum and then the #1 diet app. We tried to get really creative with little things that we could change to try and entice users a bit more, or even try different buckets of, we try lifestyle creative, so images of women, working out, or couples working out with headlines that kind of go with that. Or even if we're focused on food, making sure that if we're running to a landing page about paleo versus keto, that the image is representative of that diet. So we really kind of, from an Outbrain perspective, pushed trying different creative strategies to speak to different audiences, and understanding that targeting tactics are going to vary as well with that. So paleo may not work as well if we're using interest targeting, but if we do lookalikes, the paleo landing page and the paleo creative might be a bit better. So the moment that we could see some of those initial learnings and insights and see what's working, what's not, we really try and hone in on what's working, pause out what's not, and really push for that always on testing mode, launching new ads, launching new campaigns. In 2019, we had about 210 campaigns that ran just in English language alone. So that's not even looking at the other 9 markets that we ran in. So that we really push for that always on testing mentality. Again, look back at the more that you take from the learnings, the more successful you're going to be, as long as you adapt and change to go with the user behaviors that you're seeing.
100%. Jamie, you mentioned earlier that the Outbrain audience tends to be a little bit older than that of social, which is what you'd expect when you look at our kind of premium publisher audience mix. In terms of images, and I know I'm not going to see anything right now, but in terms of images, when it comes to premium publisher audiences, do the images that convert differ quite a lot from what you see on social in particular?
I think so. I mean, we have our own house team that produces a lot of our social content. I think with native audience, we're trying to kind of be a little bit broader, and it's kind of trying to balance it on from 2 points really. You want to attract somebody to your content and get them to click through, and the second point is that you want it to be relevant to the content that they're clicking through. I think kind of looking at those points, it's naturally going to differ kind of our social content, and it does kind of native kind of exist as it's kind of standalone to other channels. But as I mentioned before, it's still kind of, we still feed those insights that we get from native into our other channels, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think the reason I asked that question is sometimes not just app marketing, but previously we've seen that social is quite governed by our ego. So audiences tend to interact with things that resonate with them in that social mindset. So for me, if I was looking for a diet app on social, seeing somebody in great shape that's synonymous with kind of influencers that I see there would be something that might engage me at that particular moment. Whereas if I'm reading something on BBC Good Food or CNN and I read something about a diet that's going to be really sustainable, it's healthy for me long term, it's more of a considered lifestyle choice, as opposed to something that's just going to appeal to my kind of ego, for want of a better word, I would probably be more interested in that moment. So it was just kind of understanding if there was anything around kind of social images versus native images that you've seen particularly.
I think at a kind of a top line level, also the kind of the social images that we're using are slightly more playful, whereas somebody's kind of seeing our content on a publisher website, it doesn't have that kind of same, and I don't think it should either, but it doesn't have that kind of playfulness to it, because people are kind of clicking onto a brand that they don't know and they don't trust yet. So you're kind of in that discovery phase. You're trying to kind of build that trust, but also educate at the same time, whereas the social experience is slightly different.
Yeah, for sure. So look, I think it's a funny time for us to be kind of having this conversation with you, because, you know, we worked with you in 2018, we worked with you in 2019, we've been working with you on plans for 2020. And I'm guessing that you, much like every other client pretty much that we've spoken to across the network, is having to kind of think on their feet, both around their business goals, but also about how they present their brands to their target audience, when, first of all, their target audience has probably had some significant lifestyle changes, moving towards either completely working from home or certainly moving towards that direction over the next couple of weeks and months globally. So there's that, but also actually maybe adapting your content to resonate more with this audience. So in terms of Lifesum, and being something that is still attractive to both your target audience and maybe a new one, how are you looking at content for the rest of 2020? And I guess, are there any planned changes to the app itself?
I mean, this is obviously super current. We're kind of having conversations internally about this today and all of this week, and I suspect for the ongoing weeks. And I think in terms of planning right now, it's difficult. I think that we've got to be reactive. We know that, but it's about being reactive in the right ways. I think brands have a responsibility to think responsibly as well, and be considerate in this time. But also, we recognise that we are a health and fitness app. Our users are still requiring that service. So I think that we want to kind of produce content that is appropriate, but also appeals to our users in their different behaviour. I think that, as you mentioned just then, that actually we're kind of monitoring how behaviours have changed, and actually right now is another learning phase for us, and I think it will be for the upcoming weeks. We'll see actually kind of how people's behaviour, how those user behaviours changes, and already we're seeing the results of that in terms of the morning traffic is now much higher than it has been if we're kind of looking at standard weekdays. So we'll take these next few weeks as real kind of sharp learning curves, and then we'll kind of feed in new strategy from that. But Lifesum's in a great place, and we have a really good user base who are committed and dedicated, and it's just about working out a new way to ensure that we can reach those people.
And I think in this time where people are going to have a little bit more time on their hands to spend time with content, brands, apps, marketers that they trust, there is obviously an opportunity to create more long form content. Does video play a part in your plans for 2020? And if so, have you sort of started thinking about what that new video strategy might look like, if indeed there is one?
Well, I think this is interesting. I mean, I spoke about this maybe in the middle of 2019 when video was first on Outbrain's radar, and if we wanted to try it. And at that time, we were interested, but we never kind of really got off the ground with it. Since then, we've incorporated kind of Snapchat and TikTok into our testing mix, which has been really interesting for us. And we've actually kind of produced long form videos in-house. So I definitely think that the opportunity is there for us. And as a company, we always want to be proactive and not reactive. So we want to kind of be at the front of the curve, not at the end of it once kind of everything is exhausted. So looking for ways to improve kind of our current practices. And I think video is going to be kind of a big part of that with native.
Well, it sounds like the opportunity is there for us. I didn't know. Video was this long form video that you've been producing. Click to watch, Jamie. No, jokes aside, with the long form video content that you're producing, you've mentioned TikTok and Snap, and obviously these bite-sized platforms are perfect for I guess fulfilling audiences in that moment where they want some light, quick entertainment. For the long form video that you have been producing, will native become part of that testing strategy? Obviously, we've seen 8fit, for example, produce a series of videos that haven't just been great for, full watch rates. They've also been good for conversion, actually, people becoming more informed about what the app can do, getting a taster of the type of workout, the type of diet, recipe that they might find there. Much like I said earlier, the more information you can give to somebody up front, download, the more likely they are to then actually spend time and have a propensity to have a longer term relationship with that app. So how much do you think, well, really, do you want to test some native video?
I think it'll be interesting to go forward. But I mean, just like we've spoken about here, kind of testing the native strategy for the past year and a half, I'm guessing it will be the same with video. So we know that the type of video that we're kind of producing for Snap and TikTok is going to be kind of completely different from long form native. And I think that, as you mentioned there as well, it's about trying to kind of find the balance between kind of view through rate and actual conversions, and kind of how does that align with our goals of trying to get people to not only install the app, but actually kind of convert and become a paying subscriber. And I'm sure that video will pose a whole new set of challenges. I'm sure of that already. Yeah, as I said, we want to be proactive, and in exactly the same way that I've mentioned, it's just about using kind of learnings from other channels and applying them where we can do. And I think that where we've produced long form content, I mean, that would be something that we could start with, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be kind of nailed on to work. And I think that, going forward, we would just see it as kind of another kind of learning opportunity. And we're always kind of keen to test new things and try and improve the way that we interact with our users.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us today, Jamie. Kelly, as ever, thanks for making these things work on behalf of So thanks guys, and we'll look forward to catching up with you same time next year and reflecting on what Christmas 2020 and January 2021 look like.
Okay, hopefully good things.
Thank you.